Hello, my name is Michael Lambert, and today I want to talk a little bit more about Brexit, and I also want to talk a bit about Trump. Now, to those who say, just shut up about Brexit, we're sick to death hearing about it, and we need to move on, and it was all 8 years ago and so on, my response really is that it's having an ongoing effect upon our economy, which is, as far as one can see, weakening. And all the talk in the world about going for growth and becoming the fastest growing economy in the G7 is a lot of hot air, because it isn't going to happen whilst we're outside of the EU. Now, those of you who've been kind enough to watch my videos in the past will know that I'm not a big fan of Keir Starmer. However, I have to say that last week I think he had a pretty good week. I thought his trip to Paris, where he laid a wreath with Macron at the Arc de Triomphe, was pretty impressive, and I thought it looked really good. I mean, the so-called optics were absolutely brilliant, I thought. Also, he seems to have got a bit more confident now, and I thought in PMQs, I mean, he absolutely trounced Badenoch, who I think more and more people are realising that her rudeness and aggression, which I think she and a lot of other people interpret as being strength and leadership, is in fact just rudeness and aggression. And there's nothing really there. I mean, she was absolutely pathetic last week, and so we'll see. Maybe she'll get better at it, but I think so far she's been pretty disappointing, and I think there's every possibility she may not last that long, as more and more people realise that there's nothing there. Now, Brexit is continuing as a sort of slow puncture, or sort of a sinking ship that try as we may, we're not really going to fix unless we actually acknowledge that there is a problem. And I think there are signs now that certain politicians who might previously been reluctant to admit that Brexit is not the greatest are beginning to realise that it isn't. And three quotes I have for you from last week, which I thought were all quite interesting. Tulip's Sadiq, the Treasury Minister, in response to a report from the OBR in which they said that the impact of Brexit was going to be on trade intensity, a loss of 15% and a 4% fall in GDP. She said, and it was quite alarming, she said that 60% of the economic impact of Brexit is yet to come. So if what has happened to our economy since we left the EU is only 40% of the damage that's going to be done, then I think it's a little bit concerning. Now, Rachel Reeves, yesterday, she was at Mansion House for the famous Chancellor's speech, and during it, I'll quote what she said. She said, and we face structural challenges too, including those which have come from Brexit. First time she's ever acknowledged, I think, that Brexit's caused any harm at all. And then she went on to say, and of course, our biggest trading partner is the European Union. We will not be reversing Brexit or re-entering the single market or customs union, but we must reset our relationship. I mean, again, I've said this so many times before. I mean, talk about resetting our relationship when we're outside the club is nonsense. You know, I can reset my relationship with the royal family, but it doesn't mean to say I'm going to be around at Buckingham Palace having tea or staying at Balmoral. You know, we're outside. There's nothing to reset. All we can do is fiddle about it with phytosanitary regulations at the borders. It's just, I don't know whether they're deluded or whether, I don't know, do they think we're that stupid? And then the governor of the Bank of England gave a speech also at the Mansion House last night, and he was selected by, he was appointed by Boris Johnson because he was very pro-Brexit, Andrew Bailey. And he said that the changed relationship with the EU has weighed on the economy. Now, interpret weighed as you like, but I don't think it implies that it's improved things very much. And so you've got the Chancellor, the head of the Bank of England, and the Treasury Minister all really pointing out the fact that Brexit isn't going too well. And at the same time, they go on and on about growth. Where is, as I've said before, where is this growth going to come from? Growth isn't going to come from the EU because for small and medium-sized businesses, it is virtually impossible to export to the EU, or for that matter, to import from the EU. It's just too much trouble, too much paperwork. And where else is it going to come from? Are we keeping our fingers crossed for a deal with the United States? You know, there's a lady called Molly Scott Cato who was an MEP, and she said, how can the UK compete against the low prices of China, vast subsidies as a result of the Inflation Reduction Act in America, and frictionless borders within the EU, on top of which we're likely to be facing trade tariffs very soon? Where are we going to get this growth? You remember pro-Brexit MPs before the referendum saying that countries will be queuing up to do deals with us. What deals have we got? We've got nothing. Johnson sent Liz Truss off to Australia and New Zealand to do a couple of absolutely miserable deals that they're still laughing at. Only so as it would make it more difficult for us to rejoin the EU. And there was that AUKUS, it wasn't a trade deal, but that AUKUS business with the submarines too, with Australia and the United States. And I came across a quote. In fact, it was put to Boris Johnson last week by an interviewer, and she said that Paul Keating, the former Prime Minister of Australia, he described the AUKUS Pact as the worst deal in history. He said the UK is looking around for suckers to create global Britain after the fool Johnson destroyed their place in Europe. And that's in a nutshell, isn't it? Desperate for trade deals. Nobody's going to give us trade deals, but we're not going to the EU. Absolutely not even going to consider trying to come to some arrangement with the EU whereby we can get back into the customs union or single market, or eventually join again. And still they're trying to cherry pick. Keir Starmer was at some conference, an Interpol conference, I think it was last week, the week before. And according to the Daily Telegraph, it said Starmer is seeking to restore a pre-Brexit deal with the EU that will allow Britain to take charge of international investigations into people smugglers. Cherry picking. It isn't going to happen. When we left the EU, we were no longer able to access all this information that Interpol keeps. And yet we want, according to this article, to take charge of it. I mean, is that for the whole of Europe? Are we going to take charge for immigration illegal immigration in Italy and Greece? Are we going to take charge of everything? So we're left really just with fingers crossed, hoping that Donald Trump will give us a trade deal. And people are running around all getting all excited, saying, "Oh, he won't impose tariffs against us because his mother came from Scotland, and he likes us because he liked Brexit." What does he care? Yeah, he cares for Donald Trump and for the United States. And I think Starmer and David Lammy went round and had a meal at the Palace de Versailles at the top of Trump Tower a few weeks ago, didn't they? I can imagine Trump. He's such a huge character. Looking at David Lammy, he's a racist anyway, so he wouldn't have had much time for him. And looking at Keir Starmer, who's quite a mild and polite and not, with all due respect, not terribly charismatic character. Looking at those two, I don't think what was going through Trump's mind was, "Oh dear, I'm going to have my work cut out doing a deal with these two." He knows we're desperate. He knows we're desperate for a deal. Whatever deal we get with them, with the United States, if we were to get a deal with them, would absolutely screw us. And I think the best we can hope for really is that America's going to come over and they'll be setting up businesses in our free ports where they won't pay any tax for 10 years, and they get all sorts of other concessions and be able to employ labour at below normal rates and so on. And so we've got this new president we're going to have to deal with one way or another, and it really is. I'm obviously I'm not the first person to say this, but here we have a guy he was sued in the 70s for discriminating against black renters when he was a landlord. He's been convicted on 34 counts of fraud. He's been convicted as a rapist. He's stolen state secrets and documents and taken them to his Mar-a-Lago. He's twice been impeached as president, once for inciting insurrection. He was accused at one time of with Epstein of raping a 13-year-old girl. He's banned from trading in New York, and he can't really complete a sentence without lying. And yet he's the saviour because he's going to make America great again. And there are so many parallels with Brexit and Trump. A lot of people who really probably not very interested in politics fell for the charisma and the way that people fell for the charisma of Boris Johnson and we're persuaded that he'll take care of it all and it'll all be great. My own view is that, and this, you shouldn't really make predictions when you're making videos like this because they're for all to see. But my prediction is that he probably isn't going to last. I think he's too impulsive, he's too irrational, and I think whereas before he was certainly restrained because he was still a bit to beginning with his first term. He didn't know the ropes and needed other people, and he had less power. Now he has complete power. He can do absolutely anything he wants. And I think, in the same way that I don't like to say I told you so, but I told you so. But I predicted that Boris Johnson wouldn't last a long, long time. When he was at his peak, when he was talking about having a second term and a third term, and then resigning and going off and making money and having a good time, I predicted he wasn't going to last. I just thought he was too reckless. I didn't predict Partygate. I didn't know how he would be brought down, but it seemed to me that someone like that couldn't last. And likewise with Trump, I think he's just risk everywhere, and something is going to go wrong. I suspect he will fall out with Musk quite soon, because Musk is another huge personality. I think Musk probably thinks he bought the presidency for Trump, and that Trump owes him, and Trump won't like that at all. I think sooner or later there'll be some clash there. And when you look at the sort of people he's appointed, you look at the Secretary of State for Defence. This guy Pete Hegseth. I mean, he's in charge of a military with a $800 billion budget, 1.3 million active employees, and 1.4 billion reservists. And this guy was a major in the army, after which he became a chat show host on one of Rupert Murdoch's Fox News channel. And what do all the big four-star generals think about that, having this guy above them? And you look at this Attorney General, Mark Getz. He's a guy who the Justice Department decided not to charge him as part of a sex trafficking investigation. He also faced investigations from the House Ethics Committee over allegations that he engaged in sexual misconduct and illicit drug use. He denied all wrongdoing. And then there's this woman, Kristi Noem, who's head of Homeland Security, and there's an article you can find online about how she shot her dog because it was a bit aggressive, and she also had a goat and she didn't like that one, so she shot that at the same time. I mean, these are crazy people. And then, of course, you've got the David Icke of US politics, which is Robert Kennedy Jr., who, just completely bonkers. I mean, is he going to ban all injections, all vaccines? So I think between them, such a chaotic selection of misfits and oddballs that he's appointing, things are going to be interesting. And I think with his imposition of tariffs on all imports, that's going to have a dampening effect on the economy. It must do, because there are an awful lot of people in an awful lot of companies in America that export are going to find it more difficult to export. And I think then, as he's threatening to do, to actually throw out 1 million of your workforce. A lot of people have been working, no doubt illegally, but nonetheless, to throw out 1 million is going to leave him with a shortage of workers. And so, in many ways, he's just sort of having a look at Brexit and seeing, they put up barriers to trade with the biggest market across the channel, and they also made it very difficult for people to come and work by making freedom of movement very difficult or impossible. Let's have a go at that. We'll do the same. And so I think I think the future for the American economy for the next few years is probably going to be a bit uncertain. But anyway, that's what I think about it. And as always, if you watch this far, thank you very much indeed. If you haven't subscribed, I'd appreciate it if you do so. And so until next time, thank you for watching, and bye for now.